Hi, I'm Allie, a test prep tutor and strategist at Test Geek. What is an M dash and what do you need to know about them for the SAT? So you may have heard in school that you can use those commas to separate out like a dependent clause, and you can take out that dependent clause and the sentence is still good. It's still grammatically correct. You can use M dashes in a very similar way. And so they're used to, in the same way, offset information. If you take out that information that's inside of those M dashes, you should be able to still have a grammatically correct sentence. Let's take a look at a few examples. So this first sentence is actually using commas. The car, which is on the street, needs a new tire. So this is just what I was talking about. It's separating out a dependent clause, which is on the street. This dependent clause could be taken out, and we could read the sentence as the car needs a new tire. This information is helpful. It provides more information, but it's not actually necessary to the sentence, and that's why we need to separate it with commas. Let's take a look at this next one. So here we have parentheses. The car, the one that's falling apart, needs a new tire. So again, non-essential information. It's a different type of information here, and the subtlety is not necessarily tested on the SAT, but I just wanted to point out that we wouldn't use commas here. Parentheses are most appropriate, but the same thing applies, that this is additional information. It's dependent. It's not a standalone sentence. We can take it out and we can still have an adequate sentence. The car needs a new tire. Okay, this last example uses our M dashes. The car, the one she refused to take care of, needs a new tire. So again, another example of a dependent clause. Extra information we do not need in the sentence. So we can take that out and we can say the car needs a new tire. And it works perfectly fine. So as you looked at these examples, you may have noticed that this is different types of information that we've separated out with commas, parentheses, and M dashes. But the good news is for you, this doesn't matter. On the SAT, they are not going to test like the differences between using commas, parentheses, and M dashes. All you need to know, honestly, is when you do need to separate information out and that this punctuation needs to match. So if you're going to use commas, commit to using commas. In one sentence, it should only use commas. If you're going to use parentheses, you can't use one parenthesis and then a comma at the end. Obviously, you'd have to close that parentheses. The same thing applies for M dashes. So if you're going to use M dashes, you can't use an M dash, then a comma at the end of that dependent clause. You have to just pick one or the other. Pick one type of punctuation, and that will allow you to appropriately section off that information that's non-essential in the sentence. Let's take a look at a few more examples. The tree, which I chopped down myself, is now decorated in our living room. Okay, so does this look right to you or wrong? We have one M dash and we have one comma. So that's going to be wrong. We have to use matching punctuation. So let's correct this. And we could say the tree, comma, which I chopped down myself, comma, is now decorated in our living room. Alternatively, we could use two dashes here instead of two commas. The SAT will never ask you to pick between just dashes or just commas. They're just looking for your understanding that this does need to be separated by some type of punctuation, and the punctuation must match on both sides. All right, our next example, the new shoes, sparkling in their box, delighted him greatly. Again, we have an issue, right? We have one side of the dependent clause that has an M dash and one side that has a comma. So we're going to fix this by replacing that comma with another dash. And this looks just fine. So what we've gone over so far is the main way that you're going to see M dashes show up on the SAT. There are a couple ways that occasionally we see dashes tested on the SAT, but these are far less frequent. The first is one dash to introduce lists. So pretty unlikely that you'll see this, but just want to familiarize yourself with this if you're really looking for a top score and wanting to cover every single thing that might possibly be on the SAT. So let's look at an example here. Take down the decorations, the wreath, the lights, and the tree. Dashes can be used just like colons to introduce a list. It's much more common to use a colon, but again, similarly to what we looked at before, where you're not going to be asked to choose between commas and dashes, you won't be asked to choose between colons and a dash here, but it's important to just recognize that this is technically grammatically correct, that you can use it kind of in place of a colon to introduce a list. Let's look at another example. The things I need from the store are bread, eggs, and milk. Okay, do we really need this dash here? Is it necessary? No. We could just take it out and say the things I need from the store are bread, eggs, and milk. So this is very, very similar, if not identical, to how we use colons. So go and watch the colons video if you're looking for a little bit more help here. But if we don't need the colon or the dash, we want to take it out. We don't want to just unnecessarily use punctuation. So we could alternatively rewrite the sentence and say something like, remember when you're at the store, bread, eggs, and milk. So in this case, we can't just take out that dash and have a grammatically correct sentence. We actually rely on that dash to aid our understanding of the sentence, first of all, but also to make it grammatically correct. So that would be a good use of a dash here. The last way you may see an M dash tested on the SAT is when a dash is used for dramatic pause. So an author may use an M dash to indicate emphasis or create drama in a sentence, something like that. Adds a little bit more oomph to the sentence. So let's take a look at a couple examples. He loved dogs, but severe allergies prevented him from ever owning one of his own. I told her to meet us at the fountain. At least I think I did. Wait, I have the key right here. In all three of these examples, we're using an M dash to sort of break up the tone of the sentence, to sort of draw attention to something that's happening in the sentence, and it creates a little bit more emphasis or drama. This is pretty uncommon to be tested on the SAT, but I want you to be aware of this so that if you do see it, you can recognize this as a valid use of an M dash. That wraps up everything you need to know about M dashes for the SAT. If you're looking for a little bit more practice on M dashes, or if you want to learn about N dashes, those shorter versions of dashes, you can check out the M dash and N dash blog at testgeek.com/blog. Also, subscribe if you're looking for more content like this. Thanks so much for joining me.